What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today I want to talk about the state of black people globally and how we're doing great and we are progressing at a rapid rate, and how I'm really happy to see how we're coming along as black people. I know there's a lot of black people that like to sell doom and gloom. They like to sell, drama and negativity. And because it's real easy to talk about the negative aspects of the black experience on this planet, what all the negative things that we got going on. And, every group has negative things going on. The only difference is only certain groups' negativity gets highlighted for monetary gain, right? And I don't think that we don't pat ourselves on the back enough for the positive things that we do. For instance, if you notice, African Americans, black people, Africans on the continent, Afro-Caribbeans, and to a certain extent Afro-Latinos are very loud and boisterous on the internet right now, talking about our issues, talking about the things we need to do to improve our situation on this planet, because of the things that have been done to us or the things we allow to happen to us, whether it be in our control or not, right? We have a lot of misinformation flowing around, the ether. We got a lot of pseudo historians. We got a lot of pseudo politicians. We got a lot of pseudo black power people. Everybody's just trying to make a buck on the internet, right? So everybody try to find a lane and they try to make their money. Now it's like black power for pay, Pan-African for pay, black politician for pay. Everybody just trying to get paid, right? But you look at the grand scheme of things, look at the bigger picture. African people around the world, we have brought ourselves to account, right? We have made ourselves aware of our situation, and we are taking the necessary steps to improve ourselves, and we're quite successful at doing so. And let me compare what we're doing compared to what other people are doing, right? Because a lot of people like to use other groups as a metric to downplay us. Even black people, they like to say, all the Asian people, the Jewish people, all these people are doing so great, right? Without taking into consideration historical, political, and social economic issues that truly plague us. You got some black folks that want to pretend like systematic racism doesn't exist, hasn't existed, and is still not affecting us to this day. You got a lot of black people who just want to pretend like we're not still being victimized within the systems that we live in the Western world. You got some black folks over here that want to pretend like we are just victims and we can only be victimized and there's no hope and there's nothing we can do and everything's doom and gloom and woe is me, and begging Massa for forgiveness, begging Massa for money, begging Massa to unconquer what he's already conquered, right? Nowhere in history has a conquering force ever willingly gave up what he's conquered to the people he's conquered. So to expect someone that's spent hundreds of years, millions of their own people's lives and resources and energy to conquer other people for their own benefit, you can't expect them people to give it all back in one fell swoop. That's why reparations, though we are owed, which is true, we're never going to get it. Because if anybody knows anything about economics, if anybody knows anything about politics, the amount of money that's owed to African Americans is such an amount that if the powers that be were to give it to us, they would effectively be giving up all of their power. They don't have the money. It's already been spent within the institutions that we live in. You understand? Trillions of people don't even respect how much $1 trillion is, right? Keep in mind, this is the same country, America's the same country that won't even give us universal health care, and it would only cost a couple $1 trillion, maybe $2-3 trillion to implement that, like some of the other first world Western countries that we have out here. So to say that they're going to give a group of 44 to 50 million African Americans $15 to $20 trillion is just absolutely asinine and insane. Never going to happen. You would be making us the richest group of people on the planet. You would basically be the Europeans would go right back to living in cages if they were to do that. No organism would ever give up themselves like that. This is not going to happen. So though we are owed That's never going to happen. So we can forget about that, even though we acknowledge that we old. But we can't sit here and pretend like we as a group of people are not supposed to continue to fight for the things that we owe. It's just that we have to remember that the laws of nature still apply, and we have to force the issue. We have to go take what we want. They're not going to give it to us. We have to take it. And right now, Africans, African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, we're doing just that, right? We're doing just that. We are taking back what is ours. We are getting back our history. We are getting back the knowledge of self. Yeah, we have some people who are just unknowledgeable. Sometimes I also, I suffer from calling them names too. I call them stupid, dumb, idiots, blah, 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 right? Yeah, I probably can do a better job at that. But the truth of the fact of the matter is they're just unknowledgeable. They don't know. They're not aware of their situation. They're not aware of the historical, the political, the economic, the geopolitical world around them. And they just listen to others. Human beings tend to listen to others. It's easier for us to process basic information. That's why media corporations give bullet points, because they know people will run off with bullet points easier than actually reading the Wall Street Journal or actually watching C-SPAN, because it's boring, right? That's why you have Fox Entertainment, CNN is entertainment, MSNBC, that's all entertainment, because people tend to retain information that entertains them versus boring politics, boring numbers and crunches. But to get back to the point at hand, let's take us, because people like to compare us with other people, and let me do it, right? And I'm gonna do it in a positive light. African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, continental Africans are the only group online utilizing the technology that we developed, we invented, right, to make it so we can better communicate with each other. Keep in mind, the reason why we are so advanced the way we are in this modern day, this modern world that we have with all this technology and access to information, is because our ancestors, our West African ancestors, right, developed the technology in various different fields so that we can have what we have today. Now, is it to say that other groups didn't participate? They sure did, but we are the majority of these things, the technologies that gives us comfortable lives in the West, was invented by us, right? So because of that, we African Americans are able to communicate much better now. And if you notice on the internet, we are African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Latinos, continental Africans are the only racial group that is actively talking about reconnecting globally. We are the only group that's actively pushing and campaigning to do business with each other globally. We are the only group that's actively talking about trying to reconnect ourselves socially together. We are the only group. You don't see the Indian diaspora in the Caribbean, in South America, in America, actively online without unapologetically talking about going back to India and developing and building India. You don't see the Indian diaspora online saying, the continental Indians telling the Indians in the diaspora, hey, why don't you come back and develop this place? And you don't see Indians in the diaspora actively creating their businesses that we say that they're so successful in and going back to India and developing their place. We don't hear them talking about that. That's not something that they're actively doing as a group of people. You don't even hear Latinos talking about taking all that success that some people seem to think that Latinos in America are so successful and they're doing all these things and they have all this community. We don't see Latinos actively online, because we see them online talking about various different topics, but we don't see them online actively talking about, hey, let's gather this money together. Let's take back over the West Coast of America that belongs to them. As a matter of fact, all of America belongs to the Native Americans, but it's just that they don't, that's a whole nother issue within their identity, because they seem to take ethnicity as a race when Mexicans and all those Latinos are not a race. They're just a group of people, just like they're Spanish, Black, and Native. And they have an issue even in recognizing their actual identity. You see, they're so far behind, they're not even exactly where we are. At least we know who we are, for the most part. Yeah, we got some weirdos calling themselves pretendians, but for the most part, that's a small fringe group of people who are just unknowledgeable, and they just don't know, right? So they just take on bullet points from grifters who make money off lying to them, right? Every group has that, right? You got some Spanish people in the Hebrew Israelite. You got Spanish people who think they're Hebrews, right? Everybody think they're something, right? You got white people who think they're everything, right? everybody thinks they're everything, right? But in the big grand scheme of things, you don't see Latinos taking all that money, all that stuff from the West Coast and going back to their original countries, El Salvador, Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, all these places that they're from. You don't see them actively talking about and campaigning to go there and rebuild and rebuild Central and South America to lift their countries from underneath the foot of the American economy that actively crushes them to this day. The same way they're trying to do Africa. You don't see that. You don't see Asian people coming over here actively working together. Because keep in mind, we keep saying the Asians are so, they're doing all these things and they're making all this money and they got so much education. You don't see Asian people online or anywhere in any capacity saying, well, let's get together, let's pull our money together and go over here to our individual Asian countries and economically connect with our brothers and sisters back in the mother country and connect in a major way. You don't see any other ethnic group doing that. What you do see is you see people from the middle and upper class of these various different countries come to America and buy in to the American dream by trying to get as close to whiteness as humanly possible, by denigrating the black person, even though if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't even be able to be here to do the things that they do. But they have to forego that information and they have to capitulate to the white power system, which they were told when they came over here. We understand that. But actively, African Americans, even though we're under attack by the European power structure that was not built for us in the first place, we keep talking about fairness. It doesn't have anything to do with fairness. The system wasn't built for us. We built the system. We were the cog in the machine that built the system. The system wasn't built for us, right? But we made a place anyway, right? We have an active law enforcement in this country, if you're not paying attention to the news, that finally other people are finally coming to the realization to the things that we've been saying, that the active law enforcement company are still the slave catchers of the day. They still are the racist majority. The law enforcement is majority white, underprivileged white people given authority to overlord over the people of color and black people. And even in the West Coast, the Mexicans and the Latino police officers have capitulated to the white power system, and they're also just as racist, if not more racist, so they can suck up to their white daddies towards African Americans. We see, understand, due to all of that, even though we have to deal with the law enforcement going against us, the economic system going against us, the real estate system going against us, everything that could possibly go against us is going against us. That does make us a victim? Yes. We are actually victims. Does that mean the victims can't do something to empower themselves and push forward despite the victimization that we have to deal with? No, we can still push through, and there's evidence to the case, and we're doing it now. So despite all the enemies that surrounds us, we as black people, like we've always done throughout history, we're continuing to rise and grab our own agency and build ourselves economically. Africa is rising, building itself economically, and dismantling itself from the white European system to gain their own agency economically and socially. And we are also connecting, and you can see that live. And unlike other groups that's really quiet, see other groups, they don't say anything because they're afraid to talk truth to power. They're afraid to open their mouth. And sometimes that can be looked at as, oh, they're not complaining, they're just getting to work. No, they're not complaining because they're afraid. That's the truth. They're not complaining because they're afraid if they complain, they wouldn't be able to take the heat that will come upon them if they do. But you see us, we've been taking the heat so long, we don't even care. It's like, whatever. What worse could you do to us that you have not already done to us? You've beaten us, you've raped us, you've eaten us, you've stomped us, you kill us openly on camera and get away with it. I mean, what more can they do to us? We're at that point now. So we don't care. So we'll still speak truth to power, and that's dangerous, and they know that. So despite all the great groups of people coming over here and seeming like they're rising above the economic ladder above us, that's not what's really happening. All right. And even if they're doing that, it's mostly on the individual level, and they're not helping their group of people. They're not communal. They're not doing it and taking it back to their countries to build up their countries, to separate themselves from that white power system. They're not playing chess. They're capitulating. But see, now Africans, we're starting to play chess. We are starting to play chess, and we are moving this train of economic independence forward, and everybody else wants to jump on the train because they know how powerful our train is. That's why every group wants to attach to us when it benefits them. Brown wants to attach to black people when it benefits them. Other groups want to attach themselves when it benefits them. LGBT community want to attach themselves to us when it benefits them. That's why you have the word woke. The woke The word woke was meant for black people to wake up to their situation within the country that they live in the white Western world. That's why white Republican conservative, which is no longer really a political party, but an ideological party of white supremacy, their whole job is to be against woke, be against black awakening, be against black rising, because when black rises, what do you think happens to them? And because of their nature of how they are historically, they truly believe that when we do get to a point that where we've risen to the point where they can no longer affect us the way they've been affecting us, they think we're going to do the same thing to them. Because that's what the Danes would have did to the Brits. That's what the Finns would have did to the French. That's what the Italians would have did to the Hungarians. That's what Europeans do to each other once they rise. They'll defeat each other, and then when they subjugate a group, when that group comes up, that's what they do. Then that's what the Germans do to the Russians, and that's what you see now. The Ukrainians and the Russians fighting right now. This is what they do to each other. So they feel we'll probably do the same thing, but that's not with our nature, and they're very lucky for that to be the case. Because if that was in our nature to be like that, we'd have done it already. Because it's not like we don't have the power, and we didn't have the opportunity at certain points if we had that mentality to do it before it got to this critical mass to where we have to work so hard to get out of this situation. But anyway, I just want you guys to realize African Americans and African have reconnected. We're connected. African Americans are going to the Caribbean, going to Africa, becoming citizens. African Caribbeans are going and reconnecting, going back to Africa and becoming citizens. African countries in the Caribbean are connecting themselves with governments economically, if you haven't been paying attention. Creating trade deals that can't be distorted or messed up by the West. African countries and African other governments around the world that are now African are making it so they're creating a bubble economic opportunity towards each other. The African Union has created a space for African Americans and the Caribbeans to be a part of the political process in Africa. So, I mean, it's all happening. Despite the doom and gloom, some people who are intellectually lazy come on the internet telling you that everything's doom and gloom and everything's bad and Africans, we can't do anything. That black excellence is shining very bright, just like the sun right now. It's happening. Look, I'm over here. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have seen 4 or 5 videos of any African American in Africa making a video like this. 10 years ago, when you Googled Africa in YouTube, all you got was porn. Weird tribal porn. That's all you got. Now, when you type in Africa, you get all sorts of amazing things. All sorts of people are going to Africa with their cell phones and recording places in Africa that we need to see. Recording history, recording culture, learning and reconnecting. That's happening. Do you see any other group doing that? I don't see videos, hundreds and hundreds of videos of Indians doing that. I don't see hundreds and hundreds of videos of any Asians doing that. I don't see hundreds and hundreds of videos of Europeans going back to Europe, connecting with their ancestral roots there and doing that. I don't see Europeans going to Europe en masse, trying to create businesses and reconnecting with their post-Christianity culture that they do have. I don't see any Asians going back to Asia and reconnecting with their post-colonial history like we have. I don't see Latinos even reconnecting with their real roots. They're still having problems accepting the fact that they're Native Americans. Most of them still want to be Spaniard. But when I was in Spain, guess what? Those Spaniards look at those Latinos, the ones that like to call themselves Spanish, that speak Spanish, they look at them as 4th-class citizens. They don't respect them at all. They don't even like them speaking their language. But yet they want to be associated with that group. It's insane, right? What they really should do is reconnect with their actual heritage. Start learning their actual language. And stop being so proud to speak your colonized language. The only reason I speak English is because I'm forced to, right? That's the language I grew up learning. That's what my community speaks here. And that's what a lot of the world speaks. And guess what? That's okay. But I'm not extra proud about it. That doesn't define me as an African. So speaking Spanish shouldn't define you as a Latino. That just means you speak 2 colonial languages. You speak the English colonial language and you speak the Spanish colonial language. But what about your language? What about your culture? Because most Latin culture is African culture, Spaniard culture, and hidden native indigenous people culture. So they got a lot to work on. So why do we even use them as a metric for some sort of competition or whatever? And plus, they're still on their homeland. So they have a home field advantage, even though psychologically they're still mentally set back. Africans, we're 6,500 miles away from our homeland. We didn't necessarily start off with a country that we can we can trade back and forth with. We can't just walk across the border of the Atlantic Ocean and get here back and forth. We can't do that. We didn't have those advantages a lot of these Latinos have here in their homeland that belongs to them. I'm gonna keep saying that, right? We don't have the connection. We don't have the thing the Asians have when they were purposely used as the buffer between us and them. They took advantage of that lane, right? And they still have a connection with their country where they can go grab the resources from their country to bring it over here. But you don't see them building over there. I'm sure it's happening on a small scale, but it's not a race-wide, group-wide, massive world global undertaking. But the only massive group-wide world global undertaking is African diaspora undertaking its reconnection economically and socially with our continent. Because we are coming to the realization, we are woke. We are waking up to our birthright, to our family, to our struggles, and we are waking up to the fact that we have the ability to make change as soon as we decide to do it. And that's what we're doing. And I'm proud to say that we're doing that, despite the continued negative things that happen within our culture. Because guess what? We are still human. And humans inherently have issues with each other. They're always going to have issues. We're always going to have degenerates. We're all going to have Pookies and Ray Rays. Every group has Pookie and Ray Rays. Europeans have Pookies and Ray Rays. Latinos have Pookie and Ray Rays. Asian people have lots of Pookies and Ray Rays. But because the white Western media shows you only African Americans are Pookie and Ray Rays, a lot of unknowledgeable African Americans go with that narrative. But because it's the age of information, that's slowly and surely being unlearned by us as we learn the value of ourselves. So all I want to say is, guys, African Americans, African Caribbeans, and the Afro-Latinos who's about that life, Cubans, all right, Cubans are about that life. When I say Afro-Latinos, the Cubans, they're about the most pan-African black people on this planet. They've always put their money where their mouth is. They put their troops where their mouth is. They put everything on the line. So we must give much respect to the Cubans as far as the Afro-Latinos and all the other Afro-Latinos that have to deal with the racial injustice within their countries that's hidden by the white people who speak Spanish that hide them in the media. All right, so I just want to acknowledge that there are black people within these Latin countries that try their best to show their solidarity with Africans, even though they're being hidden by those white people in those countries who speak Spanish and those capitulating mixed people, right? Capitulating mixed people who want to be close to whiteness, who also participate in subjugating the black people, thinking that they'll get some sort of butter biscuit from the white people. And for the mixed people in our country, understand the only difference between a mixed person in our country who speak English and a Latino is the language. It's the same thing. A mixed black, white, white and whatever they are in this country that's causing the issues because they don't seem to be able to connect properly with Africa as far as they're concerned. They have the same psychological issue as these Latinos who still can't figure out who they are. Just like those Arabs who are the very first mixed people of black, European, Asian, still can't figure out who they are. And they still want to capitulate to white while going against black. So it's the same thing. Anytime you get that mix, Arab, Mexicans, Latinos, and these mixed mulattoes, they're basically the same group of people causing the same problems wherever they are because of identity issues. Identity issues. They don't know how to identify themselves. But that's, that can't be helped. That's just something that we have to deal with as black people. And that these people in different aspects will always be around whether they speak Arab, Latino, or American, or Spanish or American, okay? But anyway, us black people, we're doing great. And all we have to do is keep up the good work, keep up the communication, and we need to do our best to educate those who are not educated. That's all. And the more we get on board with this Pan-African thing, the better we'll be in the future. That's all I got to say. Is Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach them. I'm out.